So the fall is here, and that means the next-gen consoles are coming out relatively soon. And really, for the first time, I was kind of following the news on some of the releases and some of the info. And it hit me after about 15, 20 minutes of kind of going through this information. I just don't care. And this is the first console generation where I'm really not caught up by the hype. I'm really not looking forward to these consoles in any sort of meaningful way. And it's going to be the first one in a long time where I just skip the release. And it's really, again, it's not due to a hatred of gaming or anything like that. There's just nothing compelling to me about these consoles. And I started thinking about it, and I think there's kind of a few key reasons why this launch just doesn't have any juice to it. It just doesn't have the excitement of the past. So the first reason that I feel this way is you have this release lag. And the past few launches, it's only gotten worse. The first year or two of the console's life is just a desolate and boring stretch of time. Look at the Switch. I mean, the Switch, we are, 3 years since the Switch release, and still we're waiting for a lot of meaningful first-party content. You got a lot of Wii U re-releases, you get a lot of remakes, but very, very few truly new and exciting titles. And that was the case with the PS4, the Xbox. I mean, the Xbox One, Xbox One X. I mean, unique, new first-party titles have been a problem on that till this very day. But, with the PlayStation 4, it took, I would say, good 3-4 years before we started getting into truly interesting territory with the releases. And, occasionally with these launches, you get a few killer apps. I mean, I go back to the PlayStation 3 launch, and, it was the first time you were gaming in HD. So I personally enjoyed the Virtua Tennis 3. That was one of the games that really impressed me, and I played that for quite a while after it released. But this time, what are they offering? I mean, I'm not even clear on what's coming out day one. Maybe you have, was it a God of War game or Assassin's Creed? You have some of the sports titles. Yakuza 7 is the only one that stands out to me, but I can play that on PC, and probably I will get a very similar experience. And then you take into account that it seems like these games really aren't going to be next-gen because they're tied to previous-gen releases. So I think it's going to take 3 to 5 years, again, before we start getting something truly next-gen, games worth playing. And hey, at that point, we're probably going to be right around the console refresh. It happens within, say that, 3-year period. So why not just wait to play the better games on the better hardware? And of course, with the coronavirus, probably a lot of these new next-gen titles are going to be delayed. We saw a delay with Cyberpunk 2077. So this console generation, it might take a lot longer before the hits start coming. And then you have the question of reliability. Now, things have gotten better since the Red Ring of Death days with the Xbox 360. But, it's still not great. I think now the concern is the online infrastructure. If you're into that, will that be there day one, month one? But still, reliability of the hardware itself is an issue. My close-to-launch PlayStation 3 broke. I had to replace the laser. PlayStation 4, the same deal, although in that case the drive was just ejecting uncontrollably. Just put a game in, start playing, eject. So I've been burned on 2 console generations now, and I just don't see any compelling reason to pay the early adopter tax, and especially for PlayStation, and potentially get stuck with another, paperweight. Now, another reason for my indifference is that the new hardware features aren't really inherently that exciting. 4K has, I think, been a dud in the sense of, we sacrificed frame rate to get these 4K textures, and even then, on this past generation with the checkerboarding, it wasn't true 4K. Even on PC, it's hard to hit 4K 60 unless you have a really beastly machine. So I don't see, where we're going with the resolution. Are these consoles going to try to do 8K at some point with a refresh? I mean, hopefully we'll get 4K 60 now as a true standard, but it's tough to do, and I'm going to wait and see. Now, they are supporting high refresh televisions that are coming out, so we'll finally, be able to crest the 60 FPS mark, although I don't know if that's going to be 4K, but hey, I'd take 1080p 120. But, this entails pretty high upgrade costs. And these TVs, these higher-end TVs that support those refresh rates are expensive. And even if you, ultimately do buy them, you have space issues. I have a lot of televisions in my house. And I don't quite know where I would put a new television. To say nothing of the fact that it's a convenience issue to sell older tech. You list it on Craigslist, and you have all of the uncertainties of meeting people and, doing a significant cash transaction in a parking lot somewhere. If you sell it on eBay, you're paying incredibly high fees. And quite honestly, I've been playing high refresh rate games on PC for the past 6 years, so that feature isn't quite that enticing to me. But even if you go for it, even if you want to buy these consoles, you're going to have to deal with limited availability. They're just going to be hard to buy. And, if they follow the pattern of other releases of tech here in the coronavirus situation, there's going to be insane competition to get them, lots of scalping. To say nothing of the fact that, Sony with their whole thing about, you have to sign up and prove your brand loyalty and worthiness to be able to buy the PlayStation 5. I know there were a lot of ordering issues with the Xbox Series X. I just think it would have been better to push these launches back to a date when, most people who want them could buy them, rather than to rush them out for the holiday season when it's going to be very unpleasant to get them and potentially very expensive. But one of the larger points for me is that gaming itself has changed. It has become, this atmosphere in which predatory monetization has replaced meaningful, satisfying gaming, whether you like single-player games or, you like online games. Gaming developers, gaming publishers are constantly finding ways to extract more money from you. And the price hikes for next gen are sort of case in point. I don't think these games are going to move away from their freemium economies, but they're going to cost $10 more. And even the seemingly good deal that is the PlayStation 5 digital, I find it hard to believe that they won't make their money back they'll make that $100 back that they're giving to you on very infrequent sales on digital games and other sort of financial traps, which gaming has kind of popularized. And I think these so-called player engagement strategies are arguably no longer gaming, in that traditional sense. Games have really become psychologically manipulative online platforms rather than a form of personal entertainment. It's not just about giving you hours of enjoyment, letting you play the games the way you want to play them, but to kind of observe your behaviors and prey on certain psychological vulnerabilities, and in fact manifest them in a larger group of players. But it's kind of a negative point, but I think this manipulation is really a cross-platform experience. You can be ripped off on mobile phones, older consoles, streaming apps like Stadia, PCs. To me, there's very little incentive to pay an early adopter premium to get fleeced on these next-gen consoles. But to be fair, it's not all negative. I mean, I think there are some potential benefits to players. I think given the insane pricing of PC gaming components, the new consoles might offer players a way to get a more boutique gaming experience at a lower price with faster loading times, better loading of textures with that new sort of storage tech that they've come up with. I think in the case of the Xbox Series X, backwards compatibility could be very interesting, especially if it extends back throughout the whole Xbox game library. So I could throw in an original Xbox game, Xbox One 360, and have a significantly upgraded experience. And I think their subscription service is generally pretty good. It's a good value, and if there's a lot of next-gen content coming out and your only upfront cost is the monthly subscription, I think that's a benefit to players. But overall, nothing is really compelling me to take the plunge right away, aside from perhaps nostalgic feelings about console releases in the past. There is something fun about having the feeling of getting that brand new toy. It takes me back to Super Nintendo and Sony PlayStation, things like that. But in and of themselves, these consoles at this point in time are not inherently interesting. I think gaming content is both ubiquitous and corrupt. So there's really nothing tying you to these new consoles when you can have the same kind of experience, fundamentally the same experience, and be treated the same way by publishers and video game companies on a variety of different platforms. And when you add to this, if you're a retro gamer, you consider the backlogs that retro gamers have. There is really an infinite amount of gaming content out there that's worth playing, and nothing on these consoles that sort of screams out, no, you have to play this. You have to play this now on the next gen. So I'm perfectly content sitting back, playing what I have, and saving myself the cost and hassle of being there day one for what I think will be minimally viable products that will reach their potential 3 to 4 years after the sale.